Yeah, no, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. No, it's okay. I'm still, I still think I'm young. Almost 50, but statistically I'm over the half, so maybe I can. Well, yeah, as the introduction mentioned, I used to be a politician, a representative in the Parliament of the Netherlands for the Freedom Party, and the Freedom Party is called PVV in the Netherlands. It's yeah, the most anti-Islam party in Europe. And I will give you like a short introduction of how I came, so to say, of how I became a part of the Freedom Party, and then of course a summary of how I ended up as a Muslim. Alhamdulillah. Um, I was born in Amsterdam, 1979, in a pretty conservative family, practicing Christian family. We had a pretty regular. My father, I had a mother, I had an older brother, younger brother, a sister. We had a cat and a goldfish. And so that was pretty normal. The only thing that was a little off was the fact that we were, like I said, practicing Christians. And for the people who don't know, the Netherlands is a very, very secular country. So most of the people there are not really religious. They're yeah, pretty liberal. So the fact that we were still religious was also was kind of strange, and especially in Amsterdam because the context was extremely liberal. So the first, and to show you a little bit how Christian we were, my father always read from the Bible before dinner, after dinner. We went to church. We all got biblical names. We were all baptized. My grandfather was also a minister in church, so it was really Christian. And when I was younger, like around 15, it was the first time that I got in contact with the whole idea of Islam. I never heard of Islam before that. And that was through the father of one of my friends. He was also a minister in church, and he had a lot of books from big name scholars from the Christian tradition, like Martin Luther and Calvin and people like that. So I loved sports, so I did a lot of tennis. I played football, kickboxing, but I was also kind of a nerdy guy. So I read a lot of books, especially on the own tradition, Christianity, and I was very interested in the fact or the question: why are we as Christians right and is everybody else wrong? So that's the reason why I read the books from the father of my friend. But I bumped into this whole anti-Islam sentiment because those people who wrote these books, like Erasmus and Calvin and Martin Luther, they lived in a time where there were a lot of clashes between the European countries and the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire, of course, was Islam, and the other countries were Christian. And so those people, they legitimized their position from a theological perspective because they were theologians. So they said, well, the other people are the enemy. Why are they the enemy? Because they have a false religion. They have the religion of the devil. And that's what was what I was thought. And Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he was called the Antichrist. So he was, in Islamic terms, he was Dajjal. And now, of course, we say astaghfirullah, but that's what they told me back then. So that's what I believed, because you were young and you just accept what your father, your mother, grandfather, etc. Everybody is sharing with you. Then I was so interested in religion that I decided to study comparative religion at the Free University, as was mentioned in the introduction. But the first day I went to college was September 11, 2001. So I already was kind of biased. And then, of course, I saw these planes flying in buildings, all these people dying. And it was all over the Western news. Islam is terrorism, scary stuff, Muslims are bad, etc., etc. So it confirmed the ideas that I already had about Islam. And then 2 years later, during my college years, a famous filmmaker, Theo van Gogh, he was murdered in the streets of Amsterdam, and it was 2 blocks away from my own house. So I really saw him dead in the streets, and they slit his throat and they shot him. And the guy who did it said, "I did it because of Islam. I'm a jihadi, etc., etc." So I thought, okay, these people are even more crazy than I thought. So I have to do something to protect the country against this religion of the devil with all these crazy terrorists killing people. So I thought, what's the most effective thing to do is join a political party so I can change the law on the long term and the short term. So, and that's what I did. I wrote a letter to Geert Wilders, the guy with the blonde hair, and he said, "Well, you can help me write the policies. You can help me with the so to say the development of the ideology." And that's what I did. Years and years later, I became a member of parliament myself. And I became also the spokesperson on anti-Islam topics. We really had like a spokesperson for these things. It's kind of crazy if you think of it. But back then I thought it's perfect. So I tried to shut down all Islamic schools. I tried to ban the Quran. I tried to close all mosques, ban halal food, stop immigration from Muslim countries. Well, the whole bunch. I think you've heard things like that as well in the United States. The whole package deal. There was one of the persons who tried to push that was me, unfortunately. But later on, I got into a fight with Geert Wilders, not a physical one, but about politics, because he asked during a rally if people want more or less Moroccan people in the Netherlands. And it was during a rally of the far right, and there were a lot of people, and everybody starts screaming, less, less, less. We want less Moroccan people in the Netherlands. But I was a spokesperson, and it was during election time, and I was in my own constituency. So I phoned him, and I asked, "What is this? Well, normally we're talking about Muslims, bad people, and we're talking about Islam, but now you're all of a sudden only talking about Moroccan people." So I asked him, "Are you going to add some anti-Muslim stuff to the story?" And he said, "No. This is it." I said, "Well, okay, but we're here to fight Islam, not so much fight Moroccan people or people from Belgium or Congo or whatever. We have a problem with Islam, not so much with Moroccan people." And many Netherlands Muslims, so they kind of traumatized people who left for whatever reason the deen, and they became anti-Islam. So they joined the party, and Geert Wilders used to say, these are the best soldiers. Why? Because they feel this anti-sentiment from the core of their being, so to say. So he said, and now I said, well, it's kind of strange. You always told us these are the best soldiers, and now all of a sudden you say you want to get rid of all Moroccan people, and you leave the whole Islam thing out. He said, yeah. I said, well, what about Yusuf? This was one of the people who worked for us. He said, well, Yusuf is collateral damage. I said, okay, well, that's not my cup of tea. I'm here to fight Islam, not to fight Moroccan people. And then he said, well, then you have to change your perception on the political context we're in. I said, well, no, I'm not going to change it. We're fighting Islam. We're not fighting Moroccan people. And he said, well, then we have a problem. And I said, yeah, we have a problem. And then he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, if you don't change it or add something to the story, I'm going to leave. He said, well, you won't leave. And then the next day I left. And I was still in parliament, and I was still very, very anti-Islam. So I had a long-held desire. I was writing an anti-Islam book because I didn't want to only spit, so to say, one-liners, because that's what you do in politics. I think it's the same in the US as in Europe and the UK. It's all about one-liners, getting the news, etc., etc. But I really, and I was very sincere, strangely enough, in my task almost, in my mission, to explain to people why Islam was such a danger. So I wanted to really explain it from a Christian theological perspective and also from a political perspective. Why is Islam such a danger for this country, and not only for this country, but I think for the whole world. So I started writing this book, and it was kind of strange because I bumped into some questions I had when I was younger about my own religion. Because when I was 16, maybe a little younger, I asked some questions I was wrestling with about like dogmas of the core belief system of Christianity. And one of these things was, for example, salvation, because they always said you can only go to Jannah, so to say, if you believe in the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But also the Trinity. God is not only one, God is three. You have God the Father, God the Son, Isa, peace and blessings be upon him, and you have the Holy Spirit. And those three are different persons, but they are one in essence. So I always thought it's kind of crazy that Jesus, as God, dies on a cross. So I once asked, did God die? And he said, no, of course not. God cannot die. And it's in the Bible as well, God is eternal. So I said, but Jesus was God, and Jesus died, so God died. He said, no, it's not really God, it's the Son of God. I said, but you also say he's God himself because of the Trinity. He said, well, stop asking these silly questions. So that's what I did. I stopped asking the question. But I was also still wrestling with this whole resurrection thing. And then I once asked, why are prophets like Adam and Abraham, why are they in hell? And the minister back then, he said, well, you shouldn't say silly stuff like that. Nobody's in hell. These people, they were prophets. And I said to them, well, they are in hell. If you say that believing in the resurrection is the only way to salvation. They said, why? He said, well, those people lived before Jesus Christ ever was born. So they could not believe in the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And if that's the only way to salvation, they are all in hell. So Adam is in hell. I said, no, that's not true. Back then there was another way. So there are two ways now to heaven. And I said, why did God make it more difficult then? I said, well, it's not, you're too young, etc. So I thought, maybe I'm just not smart enough. But now, to forward back to the moment I was writing this anti-Islam book after I left the Freedom Party, I had to explain this because I wanted to make like two blocks. One was the block, the God concept in Islam, and I wanted to compare it with the God concept in Christianity. But I was fighting this whole idea of Christianity myself, and I thought, okay, let's park this for a moment, and I start with the God concept in Islam. But I had not enough knowledge about, because I really wanted to be, it had to be correct. And I studied comparative religion, but I was not a theologian. So I started asking some Muslim scholars, but of course in the Netherlands, no Muslim scholar wanted to help me write an anti-Islam book, and they hated me anyway. So I thought, well, forget about it. And so I thought, well, maybe there are some scholars abroad. So I wrote a letter to Abdul Hakim Murad from Cambridge University. But I only saw his English name, Tim Winter, so I didn't know he was a Muslim. And I only saw he professor, Cambridge, right? It's a good university. And he was specialized in Islam, Islam in the West, and all these topics. So I said, well, let's write him a letter or send him an email. That's what I did. And in the end, after that, I realized he was a Muslim. So I thought it's kind of crazy that me, as a foreigner, in his eyes, of course, writing him, asking him, can you help me write an anti-Islam book while he was a Muslim? So I thought he will never answer me. And after 6 weeks, he did. He did answer me. It was very extensive, sent me a big email, and he started answering all these questions I had. And I said, I want to help you, but you have to promise me two things. One is that you reread all your old books, so that you feel this anti-Muslim vibe again. And at the same time, you have to promise that you read all the books and articles that I sent to you. So that's what I did. It took about 3 years. There were 102 books and articles. And during this transition, I really started having doubts about what I used to believe, and I saw all these things presented in another way than I was used to. So it was so much information what was, so to say, at odds with the things I thought I knew. So in the end, this whole anti-Islam book started to become more like a search for truth with a capital T. And in the end, because of time, I won't be too extensive. In the end, I thought to myself, well, because of a lot of reasons, I think Prophet Muhammad is really a prophet, and he was not like the Antichrist. But then I thought to myself, it's kind of crazy, because I already left Parliament. I was working for the Evangelical Broadcasting Organization of the Netherlands. I know you have evangelicals here as well. Well, in the Netherlands, it's a very secular country, but strangely enough, the biggest television organization is evangelical, and they're very strong. We have our own little Bible Belt. And I was working there on the radio, and I was the spokesperson for the conservative Christians. So while I was writing this anti-Islam book, changing into this search for truth, and ending up with me thinking maybe Prophet Muhammad was really a prophet, I thought, well, I have to stop this project because it doesn't make any sense. I'm working for an evangelical broadcasting organization. The whole family is very Christian. All my friends are in the Freedom Party. I used to be an anti-Islam politician. So I stopped the whole project. So I left, I put all the books aside, and I put a lot of books on a shelf, and the shelf was too full. So a lot of books fell off because it broke. And one of the books that fell down was the Quran, or at least a translation of the Quran. And it felt open, so like this. So I picked it up, but somehow I watched at the text. What was it? And my thumb was on an ayat of Surah 22, and it's ayat 46. And in the translation, it said, "It's not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts inside." And then I thought, well, that really is my problem, because nobody forced me to write the book. I wanted to write a book. I had all these arguments lined up. I was saying in my mind, I already believed in one God, and now I was saying to myself, I think Prophet Muhammad is a prophet, so it's like a wannabe shahada almost. And I thought to myself, okay, this is kind of strange. And I still didn't want to become a Muslim, although there was nothing wrong with my eyes. So then again, I thought to myself, hey, I'll do a little prayer, because in the end you start getting a little crazy, because you don't want to gamble with your soul, so to say. But at the one hand, you have like Christianity, your roots, everything you were brought up with, all these doubts, and then all these truths and all these arguments in favor of Islam. So I thought to myself, Lord, I don't care if Christianity is true or Islam, just give me some like a sign or something. And I hoped for an angel or a silver rain or whatever, but that didn't happen, of course. But I went to bed, and the next morning, when I woke up, I felt extremely calm, at ease, very secure. And then I told my wife, I think I'll become a Muslim. And then she looked at me, and she's still Christian, inshallah. Later on she becomes Muslim. But she looked at me and she says, well, I think we'll have to put the dishes in the machine. So I was okay, I don't really see the connection between me becoming a Muslim and the dishes. But so I asked her, what do you mean? And she said, well, if Islam really is what you believe with your heart and with your soul, and I saw you writing this book. You started with this book, Endgame, the coming war between Muslims and non-Muslims, and you ended up with this book on the table called Islam, the Misunderstood Religion. So I already saw things changing, and you were never talking about Islam again. So she says, if it really is what you believe, and it is in your heart and in your soul, and there's no problem for you as a Muslim man to be married to me, and I'm a Christian woman, and you stay sweet for the children, there's no problem for me. And then life goes on. And if life goes on, we have some dishes from yesterday, so let's put them in the machine. So this is a short version of how I became Muslim. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Joram. Again, inshallah, we'll be going more into detail about this, inshallah, tomorrow at Crystal Banquet Hall at 5 p.m., inshallah, for our annual banquet. Barakallah fikum wa